federal government to investigate what has happened, the assault on the president and whatnot. And it seemed like a lot of things nothing had changed, even if the governor of Imo State had said something last week. But of course, there was election, so the attention was to other places. It was only expected that the labor union would try as much as possible to make it a nationwide thing in such a way that every other part of the country is going to feel the brunt. And of course, they are just feeling hot, an assault on their president, and especially in recent times when it seems like the NLC has not really been so much powerful as they used to be in the era of Oshiomhole. I think this is an opportunity for them to do that, and they are trying to hit the country so hard.
So this is of your last submission now. This is the NLC president we're talking about, Joe Ajaero, who was assaulted. So, and then it was assaulted in one state. But why make the rest of the country pay for it when you can just go to that spot where it happened?
I think they've been doing that since like last week. It just seemed like the other parts of the country have not been feeling what was happening. And in Imo State, and like I said earlier, Imo State had elections matters last week and whatnot. It wasn't seeming like so of course, from an analyst point of view, from a fair Nigerian, you would say, why should you burden the other 36 states when it only happened in Imo? But from an NLC point of view, if you don't try to make a statement that is nationwide, especially when you had some demands with the federal government that are still tabled and has not been met, this is an opportunity to just make them feel like if you don't address this is like a preamble of what might happen if you also do not attend the issues of minimum wage and every other demands that we have on your table. It's not fair on the country, but I also want to try to see it from their own point of view. Making a national statement makes them more relevant and more or less solidify their powers as they used to have in the past.
This takes us to the impact so far, because it's declared at midnight on Monday that we woke up into it. So far it can be reported that there's been a partial sort of compliance in pockets of the states in the country. But even though it's partial, can we look at the economic consequences, impact of even a partial strike?
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge. But many of which is going to be from the government side, because most of the people who would adhere to these strike actions would most likely be civil servants, more government workers rather than private entities, because most businesses, Nigerians, are bleeding right now, going through a lot of many other economic doldrums, high cost of everything, businesses are not as usual, buying patterns have changed for Nigerians. So you also don't want to lock up your shop because NLC says so. Everyone wants to, as much as possible, have a lot of liquidity. So private businesses will most likely not join this. But from the government side of things, which is also an important part of the general economy, would have to take a hit. How significant that would be on the economy is going to be dependent on how long it takes. But for the short time, it might not be so significant. But if it has to linger for so long, and every other body start tripping in, like yesterday in the morning, it was as if we're going to have the national grid shut down. Then at some point in the day, it seemed like it wasn't so. So imagine if that had been the case. A lot of things would have been severely affected nationwide.
Now, but let's dovetail from what you mentioned, the national grid, and this will take us to par on the agenda this morning. It's been said that the managing director of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, Chiedu Ugo, has disclosed that the debt burden of the central bank and the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading NBED within Nigeria's power system is currently estimated to be between 150 billion naira and 180 billion. That in itself, what does it say about investments in the power sector of the country, and what impact would this debt burden have?
It's no story, right, for years that the power sector has been bleeding, really, or we've been largely subsidized, and that was what the multi-year tariff offer was supposed to, the review offer was supposed to bring in place in such a way that we start having some form of reflective tariff. And if you can remember, this was supposed to have been done earlier this year, but don't forget those the review is dependent on exchange rate, on inflation, which had galloped significantly. It's already over 26% right now. By the time inflation comes out, maybe today or tomorrow, we might be seeing it close to 28%. Exchange rate had moved from about 450 to over 750. And sometimes, depending on the volatility in the market, it hits 800 to 900. So expectedly, it has changed, but that is not happening. And someone is paying for this. Because even if you look at the numbers from NERC, last year, the power distribution companies who had an underwriting of about 186 billion naira in 2022 alone. So if you are owing MBET that much money, you can imagine how much MBET in itself would be owing also. So it's just more like there's always a debt burden at every chain in the every value chain in the power sector right now.
Okay, I'll get back to your communication. I need to bring in the our clients, that's the listener, but they like to be known as our clients on Business Express. Be sure to get the messages coming on to 0809-444-0981. WhatsApp messages only. Clients, let's go. Let's see, are Nigerians really paying enough for electricity, or we are being overcharged for less services rendered by this power generation or discos, as it were? Let's bring it back. This amount in itself, how could this amount have built up? For what, really, were this amount incurred?
So most of Nigeria's electricity have been powered by gas, right? And the price of gas has been volatile, has been moving up, especially from 2020. You saw the price of crude oil move from about $30 to over $80, even hitting $100. So prices have changed. So all these things affect the price of gas at the end of the day, which also affect the cost of sourcing for electricity in Nigeria. Now, we understand that the power sector is really significantly below par, but it is still also understandable that we are also not paying the equivalent, which is fair, because a Nigerian is also going to argue that you can pay actual prices, or you can actually pay price reflective when every other aspect of the economy works. So infrastructure is there, good roads, your taxes are being put into good use. All those are questionable things that we can always bring to the table. But when it comes to the power sector specifically, we've had dwindling investment in that sector, both from private and from other foreign investors. And then Nigerians, of course, we are having subsidized. And when you have issues of subsidy, there's always a problem of development in that area. And that's some of the things we're saying here. The fact that collection is not also at par for the distribution companies, a lot of people are also owing. It also reflects on the amount that these distribution companies would eventually pay for the power that they also get from the transmission company and whatnot. So of course, it's built up across different value chain.
Now, this takes us perfectly into liquidity issues in the power sector in Nigeria. So yet, despite these liquidity issues, I like to quote the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, from a recent interview. He said, there is a gap between the cost of effective tariff that we are supposed to charge and the allowed tariff. That huge gap, the government is still handling as subsidy. This affects liquidity. So take also, there is the government is paying subsidy.
Yes, the government is paying subsidy. Although when we say subsidy in this part of the world, we don't necessarily say that the money is actually paid. It's just an underwriting. It's just going to be there. It could just be somewhere in the balance sheet or somewhere in the financials that government is owing. Does not mean the government actually have the cash to pay for that. And then you also understand that the economy has gone through a significant shift since the new administration came into play. The issue of exchange rate unification is one, removal of petrol subsidies is another that has really impacted on Nigerians. Generally, prices of everything has gone up. You would imagine that if you have to review the electricity tariff for Nigerians upward, you would have been I would not be surprised if there had been a resistance, because it would have been so much at a single point in time. So it is understandable that the government would continue to pay that subsidy for the time being, such that other cushion effect must have been put in place, and even the whole shocks must have, to an extent, stabilized before you start doing those things in phases. Because if you do that once, considering other things that have been put in place, it's just going to be so much. But yes, I can reckon that the federal government, the government as the case may be, is still paying subsidies on power.
So when we look at this, this is we're gradually wrapping up now. So from the body language and from the statement of the president, it doesn't look like they would let go of electricity subsidy any moment at this time because of the impact you're talking about. So if you were advising the president, what would be your reaction to this?
So yes, I don't think removing subsidy on power right now is a good thing. Is a right way to go, because we have so many things we're dealing with right now. And I think what we have done in removing petrol subsidy, FX unification, and many other fiscal policy, would expect that people really need to start seeing some of those things and reflect on their daily economies. So when they start seeing the dividends of some of these policies, then you can now come up with other things. You can be more receptive towards other changes that impact on our pocket. But when people don't see that, it is very hard for them to align with your direction on more or less making policies that are inflationary in nature. So my advice would be, let the government make use of, give us a time frame. I don't know. No one has come out to say that in 6 months, in 1 year, what these policies that we have set in place is going to achieve this, and Nigerians will begin to see this happen. This amount of jobs will be created. Inflation will go down, will stabilize, prices will stabilize, insecurity will be addressed, infrastructure, we're going to construct maybe 50 roads or rail stations across the country. When Nigerians begin to hear this and see them start being put in place, we are more trusting to say, okay, you want to review electricity. We believe that by the time you do that, the sector is going to improve. Everybody wants improvement. So if we can see that the sector is going to improve, of course, Nigerians can be receptive towards that. But for now, I don't think they should go that way.
In summary, but if this is what the government's argument is, do you see, if you were an investor with a country where a government is keep retaining subsidy for electricity and you can pay the true cost, would you come in to invest in that sector?
Well, asking me a direct question, that's putting me on the spot. But to be fair, one of the problem of foreign investors, or one of the things foreign investors consider, is that they want to be sure that when they invest, they get maximum profit. What subsidy does is that it does not show them that they can determine price and get as much profit as they would want. Another thing they will consider is the issue of repatriation of their profit and their proceeds. With the current FX market that we have right now and volatility we're seeing, it does not seem so green for them that they will be able to go back home with their profit. So some of these things will always impact on investment in this sector. So if you are asking me, I am telling you too as an analyst that logically, it is always a problem for foreign investors when it comes to subsidy payments.
Looks like a fine place to wrap up business. Samuel Oyekanmi, macroeconomic analyst. But let's hear what people listening to the clients have to say. This one is from Final Luboroko. I am not buying the reason why this NLC strike is taking place. However, my 2 cents here is that the strike will not be successful, just like the previous ones. Then Yinka Bulu comes in with this one. Let's agree on something to solve issues. We got to be clear about it. The NLC went into Imo State to protest. There was a statement from the NLC Imo chapter that the talk of workers being owed in the state is not true. And then it goes on. Yinka Bolo, I hope you understand. I'm just trying to get to this. And now, if you like, you can go and strike, which means you stay up well. But why shut down the office? What if I am not in sync with your strike? Why will the NSC enter banks and ask them to shut down? That's totally unacceptable, and I hope they don't create chaos on the streets. And Tayo comes in, final message. It is quite shameful that the power generation in Nigeria is at this stage, despite the change of NEPA to PACN to DISCO. The only thing constant that we see is problem as changed name, PACN. That's a wrap. Thank you so much, Samuel Oyekanmi.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. And that's a wrap on Business Express. My name is Omatseye. Good morning.